Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Writers Are People Too podcast, where you might just find that you shouldn't meet the writer of your heroes. Tonight we have with us Spencer Steve. So, Spencer, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you like to do?
I'm originally from Connecticut, though I currently live on Martha's Vineyard. And what I like to do, write and read mostly. It's creating worlds, experiencing fantasy worlds. That is my favorite thing in this world.
Awesome. Well, you're in good company if that's what you like. So, looking at your bio, in writing your first book, Everything Under the Sun, you said that you wrote every day for a month to push out that first draft. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
That was honestly surreal. It all started with a board game project in my last year of high school. We were just tasked with creating a board game, and I had a couple characters sitting in a document somewhere, and I just wanted to see where they'd take me. So I started writing up like a little bit of the world, created that the board game, and then when I was in college the next year, I just had this idea, this little spark of something I wanted to write, and so I just headed to the computer lab, and every day I'd sit down there for an hour, 2 hours, every moment I had between classes, and I'd write, and all of a sudden after a month I was like, oh, I have a book. That happened.
Nice. You're not the first person that's come on this podcast that's written a novel off of a board game that they've created. I think maybe you're the third.
Really?
And it's cool to see that, it's cool to see that like progression of, hey, I'm just going to create something to have fun with my friends. And then like, oh my gosh, there's like this whole rich world here with all these characters. Like I'm going to share that with other people. So it's cool that like I get to meet all these people that are doing that. So how long was that manuscript when you initially finished it?
When I initially finished it, it was probably when it was close to full size. I think it was about 130,000 words. I added another 20 or so thousand words through
Jeez.
editing and rewriting, but yeah, it was pretty much
So
complete.
you're writing 4,000 words a day to pump this out in a month, basically?
Usually more, yeah.
I
It
get that done in like a month. You're an incredible writer.
I haven't had that sort of success with my writing in a long time, but I'm always striving to regain that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said that your initial inspiration for it was this board game that you were creating. But tell me a little bit about like, take it a step even further back. What was your initial inspiration for the board game?
Well, really, the board game was a class assignment. It was just one of my electives for in my high school senior year, and um, I had created the characters. The way that my writing style kind of works is the ideas, the characters, the dialogue just bubbles up somewhere in my head, and I just capture it and save it for later when they start piecing themselves together. And so I'd had a couple of the characters, the main character Amaru, uh, another one of the kind of side to become later main characters, Leonidas, and one of the very small minor characters, Cynthia, from book two. And they were just in a document, and I decided to, hey, I'm gonna put them all together and make them like the tokens of this board game.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started up a little bit of the lore there. It was like the sun goddess Yamaria versus the moon god Garhowl, and they're the like controlling factors of this board game. You're trying to fight as a champion of Yamaria, get around the board game, collect the tokens to stop Garhowl, and
Okay.
from then it just turned into the actual story.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds like you've built this novel off of the foundation of world building as opposed to being character driven. Is that more or less correct?
It's a lot of both. The world building is very important, but my stories are definitely character driven. I take my inspiration from some of my favorite writers like Sean Russell and Elizabeth Hayden, who make these amazing in-depth worlds, and yet uh, manage to intersperse just some of the best character building character arcs I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
kind of strive to do the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's good to have a goal as a writer of like, hey, I know that this other author that I like, I want to emulate them. I think it's good to have a goal for that. So in your editing process, because I'm sure that it wasn't perfect when you were pushing out those 4,000 words a day.
No.
Did you lose anything or gain anything in that entire process in the novel? So like if you had a goal for the novel when you set out to write it, hey, here's some themes that I want to hit, or some world building things, or some character traits. Did you lose or gain any of those?
Definitely gain. There was a lot. Those 20,000 words or so that I added really helped flesh out the because most of the story that I had written was focused on the desert side of the story. The story split into two different stories that all taking place at the same side of the same conflict. Um, so I'd spent a lot of time in the scorched waste, the desert with Amaru, and those extra 20,000 words were mainly fleshing out Emory, the main character of the city side, and like the world there, the people of the city.
Okay. So on your back of the book blurb, I guess you could call it, I pulled this from Amazon. It says, if you like lighthearted adventure, delightful world building, and coming of age excitement, then you'll adore Spencer Steeves' Call of Destiny. So tell me about some of your coming of age themes in this book.
Well, Emory, mainly Emory and Amara, the two main characters, they are the like shining examples of the coming of age. Emory she's 21, but she's never she's a princess, but she's been kept away from the actual politics by her father, who's uh terrified of what the ruthless world of politics will do to her. So she's kind of being forced into it as the story progresses, and seeing that cruelty for herself, learning how to be a ruler, while still having that like childish mindset of I have not never having experienced any of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then Amaru is she had basically just hit her adulthood as far as the Phyroxes are concerned. At 100 years, they uh, become adults in the Phyroxy culture, and she's being forced to take on she the people want her to take on a leadership role, but she knows she has to save them, and so she strikes out on her own to save her people who are rapidly coming to extinction.
Mm. So it sounds to me like you had two lady characters. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what inspired you to write two lady characters?
I don't know why, I've just always had felt a better connection with my female characters. I something that I like to explore both sides, but for some reason I've just always been more connected with all my female characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I recently finished a manuscript, and there are a couple main characters in it. One of them is a girl though, and there were a couple scenes that I was writing. I just put her through the ringer, and I was a real dick to her as an author, and I like cried a little bit a couple times. The guy character that I wrote, like he had some rough stuff happen to him too, but I was like, he'll figure it out. But this lady that I wrote, I like really empathized with her. So I guess it's good that we as authors are having that emotional connection, and hopefully the readers will have that emotional connection as well. So going back to your first character, her name was Emory. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Um, you mentioned that she was kind of staying out of politics and then kind of getting dragged into it. Didn't really know what to do. Not really understand it. Was that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Um, would you say that she's an archetype for perhaps our generation, or how did you come up with this character?
I don't tend to focus much on themes from outside world. I'm more just focused on telling a story. I don't try to purposely put messages into my stories because that's not the kind of reading I want. I want to just immerse myself in a fantasy world and lose myself there.
Mm-hmm.
She just was another character that just bubbled up out of the gray matter in my brain. Um, she, I've always loved like kind of the just her kind of character. Like she's definitely not a wilting willow. She is no flower. She is willing to fight for what she cares about, even if she doesn't have the physical strength to do so. Two of her
Yeah, it's good
best
to have.
friends, two of her best friends are actually a race called the Kinder in my world, which are devil folk, like the tiefling of D&D, and they are not the most accepted people, but they are her best friends, and she cares deeply for them.
Okay. So going back to world building a little bit, you alluded to it when you were talking about the board game, but what are some of the main sources of conflict in your world?
This is a story all about ancient rivalries, ancient foes. The two main sources of conflict are uh, the people of Moonwatch, the uh, enemy kingdom to Sun's Reach, who have been long separated from them for 100 years. There's been this giant magical barrier called the Eclipse, and they've been the two sides have been separated, and all of a sudden, the apparently something has happened to the Eclipse, and something has to have happened because there are Chilfang, the ancient enemies of the Phyroxy, basically demonic wolf creatures that are starting to flow through and attacking the Phyroxy, which has them on the verge of extinction. And the and mysterious a mysterious army from they claim to be from an island outside of Sun's Reach comes, and they are the force that kind of pushes Emory into the political world because the leader of that army, her father, wants her to marry the son of that leading army to help protect them against the bandits and the Chilfang that are flowing in.
Hmm. Yeah, you do often see this idea of political marriage cropping up in. I mean, I guess it still happens today, probably, but in like
Hmm.
a lot of fantasy, I think it's an interesting dynamic. Whereas perhaps someone doesn't want to marry someone else, but they're being forced to it. I really like that plot device. Um, let's talk about your publishing. Are you traditionally or self-published?
I'm currently self-publishing. I did some traditional publishing originally with Book One, but after looking at the market and whatnot, we decided it was better to switch to self-publishing.
Okay, and what's your experience been with that? Has it been easy? Has it been difficult?
Uh, the actual publishing is not difficult, more getting your name out there in the very crowded market of fantasy authors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you could throw a stone in your room and hit two of them, and here we are, 1, 2.
There you go.
Yeah. So, what have you been doing for marketing? Is this kind of staying on podcasts? Are you doing ads? What are you doing for marketing?
Podcast ads, trying to post on social media they've been my main three outlets.
Mm-hmm. And so, you mentioned that you had previously done traditional. What's like the main difference for you between traditional and self-publishing?
I'd say the main difference is definitely just the amount of input that you as the publisher, being the new publisher, have to put. It was a lot of it was back with traditional publishing. It was okay. We pay you, and you take care of all of the snafus that emerge.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're self-publishing, it's now we have to know exactly what's going on, find out, investigate all the problems,
Mm-hmm.
and fix them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I talk to authors that are self-published, a lot of it, one of the common themes is that self-publishing is like a business. And so,
Mhm.
like you said, you have to take care of everything yourself. It's all the marketing, it's all the editing, it's the cover design, it's the publicity. All of it falls on you. And so I think a lot of people come into writing as a creative, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being creatives. Obviously, we're all creatives here. But you kind of have to have a different mindset, like a business mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset, if you want to be super successful at being a self-published author. So, final question for you then would be, I know you said you don't really have a lot of themes that you're trying to push in your book, no messages, but if you could have your readers take anything away from your novel, and just having a good time reading it is also something you could take away, but what would that be?
It would definitely just be having a good time reading it, being able to lose themselves in the pages, in the world. That's why I read, just to escape every once in a while. So
Mhm.
having people be able to do that is my main goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, everybody. Spencer Steeves.
Pleasure talking to you.